Call this meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you all for coming tonight. We're going to start off with the annual meeting portion of this meeting. So at this point, I'll take nominations to elect a chairperson for the meeting. When you make a nomination, please state your name and address and then who you nominate.
I move to nominate Amy Dillenberg.
And you are?
Name and address.
Anna Grace Stanley and 1783 South St. Augustine Street, Pulaski.
All right. Any other nominations? All right, then I need a motion and a second to close the nominations. Again, state your name and address to make the motion, please.
I'll move to close nominations. Heidi Melzer, 4469 Wyandotte Trail.
I'll second that. Heidi Bakovich, 600 Blue Heron Drive, Pulaski, 54162.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. We'll hand it over to Amy. Thank you.
I'm pleased to serve the school district in the capacity of chairperson of this annual meeting. My goal is to facilitate the transaction of necessary items of business while integrating, in a reasonable way, audience participation. The meeting will be conducted in compliance with the following general rules and ground rules. Take a minute to read about eligible voters who are residents of the Pulaski Community School District, 18 years of age or older, and who have lived in the school district for a minimum of 10 days prior to this meeting are eligible to vote. Any challenges that occur, because I know it's kind of hard to read that probably, if a person is attempting to vote in an annual or special meeting and is challenged by the chairman of the meeting, they shall state to the person challenged the qualifications necessary to vote at the meeting. If such a person declares that he is eligible to vote, and if such challenge is not withdrawn, the chairman shall administer the following oath or affirmation. You can go ahead and read what that would be. We'll follow these ground rules. Robert's Rules of Order will be observed to facilitate the orderly conduct of the meeting. The chairperson reserves the right to limit debate and to limit speakers to a given time limits on various subjects. The chairperson will call for voice votes on motions and may, if it's believed that we need this, call for a show of hands or other balloting method. When making a motion or seconding a motion, please state your name and address for purposes of record. Discussion is limited to the motion being considered at that time. And we'll begin with a few words from our superintendent, Mrs. Pace.
Thank you. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking part in our budget hearing and annual meeting. I am pleased to be with you as a superintendent and to update you on the service that the district is providing to our students and to our community. As our staff return for our welcome back this year on August 20th, we have, of course, discussed the philosophy of the school district, and it was highlighted in many different ways. Community, as you know, is not a word in our name. It is also an integral part of who we are as learners, educators, and citizens here. As a district, we remain future focused as we work in partnership with the communities at large. You'll find highlighted in our annual meeting booklet, the first 7 pages are highlighting the work that has happened here in the past year. I'd like you just to take notice, page 2, the graphic of our mission, which illustrates our 7 schools, each having their own identity, but united in their purpose. And then as you move through page 3 through 7, those pages are not numbered, but page 8 is where you will see the agenda. But those pages in between, these pages provide points of pride in the district, celebrating the vast programming that's offered here, our report card scores, youth apprenticeship data, and also district comparables of benchmarks hit and the dollars attached to this work. This is a future-ready report card that is district created so that you are seeing all of the offerings of the district and what it encompasses. Our larger construction projects continue at both Hillcrest and Sunnyside Elementary with the targeted completion at the start of next school year. The high school tech addition is close to completion as we hope to be in full swing by late October. This work, along with the other facility updates that has been done, will allow us to remain future focused. As always, I look forward to continuing the Raider Strong work of our schools, together with all of our Pulaski Community School District family. And I thank you for your dedication to and interest in our district and your support of public education. And with that, I'll turn it over.
Thank you. Director of Business Services, Mark Logan, will present the 24-25 budget.
Right, so I as well started with our kind of mission graphic. The budget process goes back to February. It can be a long, sometimes boring process. Really for everyone who's been a part of it. Kind of the excitement started a couple of weeks ago when we saw students back in the buildings. That's really the excitement of seeing what these budget numbers result in. Right, so our mission of success to kids. So whether you're here as a parent, board member, employee, or just a community member, just kind of grounding ourselves in, that's the overall goal of the budget, right, is to support this mission. So in the booklet, page 10 is where the DPI format starts. So that has more functions labeled out. 3 columns, so we provide 2 years of prior financial data information. 1 year to be listed audited. Last year's listed as unaudited. It has been audited, just not financial statements have been issued. So it's listed as unaudited, but those are final numbers for last year for our perspective today. That should be completed soon. And then the third column would be the proposed 24-25 budget. Again, the budget is not finalized even as of tonight. It's based on assumptions, so our third Friday count would be this Friday coming up, which will determine our revenue limit. Property values and aid aren't determined until October 1st. So this is not set yet. It will be set at the October board meeting. As I said, the budget development process has had approvals from the board. It's had input from staff, input from the community. It goes back to February, and it really aligns what resources are to be utilized for the school year. So a little bit more on revenue limit. For those not familiar, revenue limit is the amount that the state sets for a district to operate under. 2 main components it regulates is taxes and general aid. So which results in what the final levy that will be shown tonight to the community can be. It's based on a formula, based on resident and other factors, which I'll share. And right now, so this year is the second year of the biennium budget, so our revenue limit per member went up to $11,325. I know it's hard to see on this graphic. This is available online. Again, revenue limit isn't finalized. Everything in pink is still to be determined. But at this time, we have projected count, projected revenue limit with exemptions, and then a tax levy, which we'll cover in depth, but flat to what tax levy last year was. So what that results in the budget, total revenues of just over $55 million. Of that, 14.1 of the general fund comes from property taxes. That does include, we are in year 2 of our 5-year operational referendum, so 1.6 million is tied to that, which is going towards staff compensation, if you're not familiar. Right now, state aid is an estimate. It did increase this year, so just above 33 million. And then this is the last year of ESSER funding, which is COVID-related money from the federal government. We only have until September this month to utilize it, so 189,000 is being spent this year, and then that funding source is no longer available moving forward. Big changes in the expenditure side. Again, 75% of our budget is spent on people. Back in June or July, we approved a 4% wage increase across the board for all employees. And then we estimated an increase of 2% for health insurance. Why it's estimated is we are now self-funded. We do not know the total cost until the end of the year. But based on 2 months of data, everything's trending very well. We probably won't even see that 2% increase. Will probably be flat to the prior year. Again, all subject to change. On the special education side, increase in expenditure. We have seen increase in enrollment of special education pupils that have transferred into district. How that works is if a pupil with special education needs transfers into the district, we apply to the state for a transfer of service exemption that goes on the revenue limit. So we receive a portion of the cost that the district will incur. So that's why you see that kind of larger increase. Going back 2 years to the state budget, special ed reimbursement rates around 30%. It'll stay flat at that for another year. So that's why that increase required from the general fund to pay for special ed services is going to increase this year. I have seen in initial proposals for the 25-27 budget for the state that could go up to 60%. It's been there before, but again, that's a large transfer, about $6 million from the general fund to offset special education cost. Debt service, we see a higher revenue this year. We have a couple items running through there. We have our levy for our referendum debt, just at under $5.5 million. Energy exemption, I believe we have 2 years left of that. Again, that is a paid for debt, but we received an exemption on the revenue limit to cover that. And then we've talked in depth over the Field of Dreams payments that are in there, transfer required to make that payment this year, and then just ongoing donations. And then the expense side is the opposite of that, so any debt payments due are shown there. On our other funds, we do not have a levy this year for a capital projects fund, so if you're looking at the prior year, you would see a fifth line. We did that in order to, if you look at what we received as an increase versus what we're facing in wages, to kind of offset that. Doesn't mean that our capital projects are on hold. We have other funds, as well as knocking off that list over the last couple of years. One of those is capital improvement fund. We have a small transfer. We can always adjust that throughout the year with board approval. Referendum construction continues to go. That's an estimate of the expenses this year. That should cover the majority, except for July and August of summer of 25. That would go to the next fiscal year. Food service, we still run at a positive fund balance with a planned spend down. One project there is to put a backup generator at the middle school, which houses most of our freezer and large refrigeration. When we've had power outage, we are scrambling to move stuff and pack it in wherever we can. That would also help support that portion of the middle school as well, which currently does not have it. So that's one project in the spend down, as well as updating some of the kitchens as well. Fund 80, our community fund, the one change would be this would be our first year of full year of 3 SROs. If you recall, the 3 SROs have been working in the district, but they came on in January. So that would be an increase to the community fund. Here's a breakdown of the community fund levy. So our top line is the school resource officers, and you have the office and administrative support. You have athletics for ages 11 through 15, community pool, P-News, our community paper, the fitness center running there. STEP program is senior tax exchange program. So that would be seniors who are paid a minimum wage towards their property tax bills that help out around the schools. And then you have some items that are a wash to the program, so our before and after care, all community ed classes, pace setters is our travel group, and then piano lessons. So the two columns, the difference in there is user fees generated. So what's the difference between the two columns would be what is generated in user fees and not on the community levy. So when you look at all four components of our tax levy, we come to a total levy of $21.6 million. That is equal to last year's levy. So a 0% increase in the tax levy broken down into those four categories. What that means for a mill rate, again, property value is, that should be about certain, but there are some challenges before October 1st. But if nothing changes, you take our total levy divided by the property value, and you end up with a mill rate of 6.9. Looking at that compared to prior years, so last year the district was at a mill rate of 7.7. 6.9 would be this year. We don't have the state average because we don't know what other districts are levying across the state, but we will update as that well to see how we continue to compare against the state average. Information I have.
As directed in section 65.9, section 4 of the state statutes, a public hearing shall be held, the time and place stipulated, at which time any resident or taxpayer of the governmental unit shall have an opportunity to be heard on the proposed budget. Are there any questions or comments on the budget?
Donna Severson, 362 Cross Point Court. Last year at the budget hearing and at several meetings prior to that, I had asked for information from the district regarding the transportation budget, regarding the pool budget, and I never received any response at all from anyone at the district on that. And so I'm wondering, if I ask a question here, are my questions going to be answered? Because I don't know if it's worth my time or your time for me to ask the question if I'm not going to get a response.
I can answer that, Mrs. Severson. I have an email that I sent right after that meeting between our correspondents. We had about 4 or 5 voicemails. I have 6 emails. I provided all that information except which did not exist, and I explained that. So that update was sent to Mrs. Space and sent to the board as well. So it's actually a record now that I responded saying I've answered those questions. So I would suggest you do an open records request for that, and then you'll receive that information.
Yeah, what I asked though, and what you sent me is you sent me a policy that said, this is how much we're going to charge you if you ask the question to get the data, for us to look at the data. And my comments at the last meeting, a year ago at the annual meeting, was basically how much does it cost a resident to get data? Because I've spent, my household alone has paid over $50,000 plus, much more than that, to this district. And when I ask a question, what I'm forwarded is a policy that says, this is how much it's going to cost you if you're going to get an answer.
Sure. So when you see my email that's not accurate, I never sent you a cost. Your request to me was records do not exist. So I never had a bill amount. I never had a you need to pay. I believe you may have had a records request directly to the superintendent's office that may have required payment. I can't speak to that. But there was nothing directed to me, and then the comment of not response, everything was responded to.
Okay, well then I'll ask you my questions, we'll
Sure.
see if you can answer them. With the Fund 80, Community Service Fund levy, I see it says levy and revenue. Now when I think of revenue, that's money coming in. That's, revenue, it's income. And I see like the school resource officers, total revenue is $264,000 and the levy is $264,000. So where is that revenue coming from? If it's money coming in, where is it coming from?
Sure, so DPI would tell us anything from tax dollars is coded as revenue. So when we levy, if it goes through, that levy for Fund 80 is revenue to us from the taxpayers, by definition.
Okay, so that $264,000 covers the officers that are in both Hobart and in Pulaski.
Correct.
At the meeting when the contracts were discussed, I know that there was a 50% cost share with Hobart, and at that time it was 100% with the Village of Pulaski, and there was much discussion about how that was going to change and be more equalized. I've seen the reports of the amount of activity that even the Hobart officers were trying to equalize the presence in our schools. So what is that today in this budget? What is the cost share for Hobart and the cost share for the Village of Pulaski?
So Hobart is a 50-50 cost share. I'll pull it up in a second, but I believe the second year for Pulaski was down to 90%. It's either 95 or 90. And that was a 5-year step down to get to 75%. So it's actually, if I do it in my head, 92.5, but I'll pull it up here and confirm. So the Pulaski contract is a 5-year contract that steps down. So Hobart is for sure 50-50, but I will follow up and pull up the contract. But Pulaski covers 7.5% of the cost of their officers. We cover the 92.
Okay. Regarding the community pool, I can see then there's a difference. There's certainly a difference between user fees and the cost that's levied. That $52,000, what is that for? Can you give me a breakdown of that?
Yeah, so we cover cost of staffing.
What was that?
Staffing, so lifeguards,
All
pool
right.
coordinator. So there's a portion, so we allocate, our pool coordinator is 30% to the school, 40% to the community, and 30% to summer school. So 60% covered by the district, 40% for her community events. So now if a lifeguard comes in, they punch in a clock. On community hours, it would be charged to the community fund, come out of that amount. If they lifeguard during a school event, I would come out of that fund. There's a minimal supply budget, no capital maintenance or anything like that coming out of it.
How many
So
lifeguards are there?
depends on, it's not depends on the activity. So, I don't know, Ellie, if you know how many lifeguards we have on staff right now.
I believe we have just over 20 on staff, but they're all part-time.
And those percentages that you've calculated on how much is community versus how much is actually
Yeah.
district use, how is that calculated?
We would monitor based on what activities are going on. So every year for the audit, I would say, and this is for anything that overlaps PACE or summer school, based on hours and programming.
Is that according to DPI regulations?
Yes.
Regarding the Pulaski News, again, I see there's a discrepancy there. Why don't they charge, what is it we're paying for? It's not supposed to be a, Fund 80 isn't to be used for things that are school related. And these are student, workers, and it's a kind of a student newspaper. Why don't the costs cover that?
Yeah, I guess I would disagree. I consider it a community newspaper. I think many people in the community do as well. So it's a community service that we put out there. You have classifieds in there that aren't related to just the high school. So it's a community newspaper in our determination.
Where is in this budget is the Field of Dreams cost?
I'll just follow up. Can you describe cost? Is it debt payment or cost to operate, or?
Where would that be found?
So that would be in Fund 38, debt service. So long-term capital debt, 281000. That would cover any budgeted debt payments for the Field of Dreams. Other Field of Dreams cost, if we consider Field of Dreams, painting lines, mowing would be in our general operations budget. So 25,300 would be maintenance.
Okay, thank you.
And then any donations like through, they run, the concession stand would be Fund 21, so.
As you can see, some of these things are kind of difficult. I appreciate the additional numbers here, but without some definitions too, and just for the future, definitions are very, very helpful to figure out where some of these things are.
Unfortunately for compliance, DPI gives us this format, so I'm more than happy to elaborate on it, put together a presentation, but when we do this format, that's dictated by the state.
So if I do want more information and I ask for it, are you just gonna send me another policy?
I didn't the first time, but
Okay.
if the record exists, you will more than likely get it from me.
How about the transportation budget? Because when I look at that too, when was the last time a competitive analysis was done on the transportation budget?
Off the top of my head, I believe I have one in my office from 2018. The reason why I have not pushed to look at one is you look at what people paid contractors post-COVID, and everybody was blown out of the water for what they were stuck for minimums. It's certainly an exercise that can be done. I would put it lower on my priority list because we can't even get them to run our co-curricular routes for us. So it certainly could be done. It just hasn't been. So I would say we're probably 7 years out since when it was done.
Because when we do it, do we know what our cost per route mile is, or cost
Sure.
for student transfer and stuff like that?
We do know that.
Okay. Do you know that, or is that something I should request separately?
Yeah, so I know it just off the top of my head because we do a parent contract. So anybody that we have to transport, we take our total cost, our fleet, our drivers, everything, divide by the number of pupils we transport. It comes to about $700 per pupil. Now I don't have that by mile because Johnny might drive 5 and Steve is 20. So I wouldn't have it by mile. Easily I could take that full budget, have the bus garage run what miles we ran, and do that. Because most analysis will be, any bid that I've seen from outside would be based on that number of miles, number of routes, hours, and we could do a comparison.
Because I was just thinking, even some very basic high-level numbers, and I don't mean like per student per route mile, but just some very high-level numbers that would be an easy comparison from district to district. Sometimes those are just good benchmarks to have, even if you can't do a full-blown analysis on it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Other questions?
Ben Shepherd, 381 Songbird Circle, Sebastian. So you referenced in the presentation the operational budget, which, our operational referendum. A portion of that, I believe, was to close a budget shortfall, which the taxpayers approved and gave you. But then also in the presentation tonight, unless I didn't see it correctly, it looks like there's another $500,000 budget shortfall today. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the operational budget was, if we are going to stay competitive, we need to have this. I don't know if it was noted that other needs may arise. This shortfall this year is for a field transfer to the Field of Dreams payment, so not an ongoing occurrence. If I was coming and saying, hey, we passed the operational referendum, but we have $500,000 in salaries that can't be made, I would see more of an issue with it. So while it is completely filling its purpose of competitive wages, the other element has arose of Field of Dreams payment.
Other questions? As directed in section 65.94 of the state statutes, that's the public hearing. We've had our questions. Be it resolved by the electors of the Pulaski Community School District that a tax be levied on all taxable property in the amount of $21,658,812 necessary to operate and maintain the school district and fully finance the recommended budget for the 24-25 fiscal year. Is there a motion and a second to adopt this resolution? Do I have a motion?
Motion to adopt the tax levy, Heidi Bakovich, 600 Blue Heron Drive, Pulaski, 54162.
Thank you, Heidi. A second?
I can second that. Tina Calaworks, 1737 Crossroads, Bisson, Wisconsin.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor indicate with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion passes. Next, we'll go on to Resolution 24-2, authorization of the purchase of textbooks. Be it resolved by the electors of the Pulaski Community School District that the school board is authorized to furnish textbooks for use on the school's curriculum. Is there a motion and a second to adopt this resolution? Do I have a motion?
Jenny Grace Allen and 1783 South St. Augustine Street. I move resolution 24-2.
And a second.
I second that. Josh Colliday, and 4732 Elm Road, Croco, Wisconsin, 54137.
Any discussion? All in favor indicate by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Resolution 24-3, authorizing the board to acquire or lease property or space. Be it resolved by the electors of the Pulaski Community School District that the school board be authorized to acquire or lease property or space required to accommodate district schools and offices. Is there a motion and a second to adopt this resolution? A motion?
I'll make a motion. Chris Wells, 554 Highland Meadow Trail, Pulaski.
And a second.
Heidi Melzer, 44691 Wyandotte Trail, I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please indicate by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Resolution 24-4, authorizing and setting school board salaries. This is an open-ended resolution that will need to be completed in order for there to be a motion to set school board salaries. The current salaries are President, $3,550, Clerk, $3,300, and members, $3,050. Is there a motion and a second providing the salaries for school board members?
Dana, 1 second. I have 3,500 for president. I just heard 3,550 in the script. Allie, do you know what it is? President, do you know what?
It's 3,500.
3,500. All right. So the script was higher. Sorry.
Apologize for that. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Motion?
I can do a motion. Tina Calawords, 1737 Crossroads, Bisbee, Wisconsin, 54171. Motion to
And a second?
I'll second the motion. Dennis Kaminsky, 6540 Allen Road, Sabisky, Wisconsin.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor indicate with an eye.
Wait, they actually need to name the salary. You have to
Oh.
designate the salary for each position then.
Okay, so the salary for president, 3,500, clerk, 3,300, and other members, 3,050. So,
Somebody will have to decide, are we staying with those numbers or are we proposing a new salary for the members?
I do a motion to stay the same. Tina Calawords, 1737 Crossroad, Sabisky, Wisconsin, 54171.
and do we have a second?
My second is the same.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Resolution 24-5, authorizing reimbursement of school board members. Be it resolved by the electors of the Pulaski Community School District that school board members be reimbursed for actual and necessary expenses when traveling in the performance of duties, and the reimbursement of a school board member for actual loss of earnings when duties require the school board member to be absent from regular employment. Is there a motion and a second authorizing reimbursement of school board members? A motion?
Jenny Grace Alney on 1783 South St. Augustine Street. I move resolution 24-5.
Is there a second?
Second, Janelle Batten, 4817 Adriana Court, Hobart.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Thank you. Resolution 24-6, authorizing the board to schedule the 2025 annual meeting. Be it resolved by the electors of the Pulaski Community School District that the school board be authorized to set the date and time for the 2025 annual meeting. Is there a motion and a second to permit the Board of Education to set the date, place, and time for the 2025 annual meeting? We need a motion?
Make a motion, Jennifer Schwartz, W598 Huffman Park Drive, Pulaski.
Thank you. And a second.
Second, Janelle Batten, 4817 Adriana Court, Hobart.
Any discussion? In favor indicate with aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Resolution 24-7, authorizing the board to operate a district breakfast and lunch program. Be it resolved by the electors of the Pulaski Community School District that the school board be authorized to operate a district breakfast and lunch program. Is there a motion and a second to authorize operating a breakfast and lunch program? A motion?
Motion to approve 24/7 Dennis Kaminsky, 6540 Allen Road, Sabisky.
And a second?
Heidi Bukovich, 600 Blue Heron Drive, Pulaski, 54162.
Any discussion? In favor with aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Okay, resolution 24-8, authorizing the prosecution or defense of legal matters. Be it resolved by the electors of the Pulaski Community School District that the school board be authorized to direct and provide for the prosecution or defense of any action or proceeding in which the school district is interested. Is there a motion and a second to adopt this resolution? A motion?
I'll make a motion, Jennifer Schwartz, W598 Huffman Park Drive, Pulaski.
Thank you. And a second?
Second, Heidi Moser, 4469 Wyandotte Trail, Hobart.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Are there any other new items of business provided by law pertaining to the management of this district that the annual meeting wishes to consider? Thank you for your participation in the annual meeting of the electors of the Pulaski Community School District. It's been a pleasure for me to serve as chairperson. Is there a motion and second to adjourn the annual meeting?
Jenny Grace Alney on 1783 South St. Augustine Street. I move to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second, Janelle Batten, 4817 Adriana Court, Hobart.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. So adjourned.
All right, we're gonna take a brief break here and then we'll come back and do our business.